Ever, like, catch yourself staring out the window at
Yeah.
work, and you start daydreaming about just, like, ditching the whole 9 to 5 grind and chasing your real passion?
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone has those daydreams.
Yeah, so we're diving deep into that very question today, passion versus being practical and trying to figure out if there's a way to, like, make them both work for you.
It's like the age-old question, isn't it? And the good news is it doesn't have to be an either-or situation. It's more like designing your own adventure, but for your career.
Mm.
There's some really interesting research out there that digs into the surprising things that can help you build a career that's both fulfilling and, successful.
All right, let's get into it. The article we're looking at today is When to Do What You Love. And it starts off strong with this idea of what it calls an instead of trap. Like, so often people frame it as follow your passion instead of making money. So, what makes that kind of view so limiting?
It's fascinating, right? Because that instead of immediately kind of puts you in this trade-off mindset, it makes you think you can either be passionate about something or make money, but like almost never both.
Hmm.
And it misses this huge piece about how your passion could be what makes you successful.
And for some people, it might not even be about like some huge payday. Like the article mentioned how some people are truly passionate about things like finance,
Yeah.
like spotting those market trends and building businesses. The thrill is in the challenge, right? It's like solving this complex puzzle that just keeps them coming back.
Exactly. They use Bill Gates as the perfect example in the article because it wasn't just coding he was into. Plenty of people like to code. It was the challenge of building this whole software empire.
Hmm.
And that very specific, almost unusual passion is a huge part of why he was so successful.
Right. It's like that saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Okay.
But it's obvious that, like, it's rarely that simple.
Right. And that's where the article's concept of the midwit peak comes into play. This was definitely one of the most interesting points they made. They're suggesting there's like a sweet spot for how much money you can make based on how common or niche your passion is.
Midwit peak. That's an interesting way to put it. So are you saying that being really good at something tons of other people are into could actually be a disadvantage? That's kind of wild. Tell me more.
Basically, they're saying that people with like very specific and kind of unique passions might have an easier time making money off of them because they're filling a need that not that many others are, so it gives them a competitive edge. But if you're passionate about something more common, like playing guitar or writing poetry, the competition is way tougher. And that path to actually making a living off of it is going to be way harder.
Okay, so if I'm getting this midwit peak idea right, it's almost like having a monopoly on your passion. The fewer people who do it, the better your chances of success.
You got it. It's like looking at it from a whole new angle. It challenges that classic advice of follow your passion, but adds like some important nuance. Sometimes passion plus a unique skill or angle is what really brings home the success.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like finding that perfect intersection of what you're passionate about and what the world actually needs? But what about people who like want to achieve massive success, especially in the tech world? Does that midwit peak idea still hold up?
That's really interesting you ask that because the article actually talks about that specifically. Like,
Mm.
if you're really aiming for huge success, especially in tech, going after your passion might be the better way to go. Think about like Apple, Google, Facebook, all those started as passion projects. It wasn't some calculated plan to make money. It came from a place of really wanting to create something new and cool.
Yeah, it's crazy to think those huge companies started with just someone following a passion. It wasn't just about the money, it was about building something they truly believed in. Pretty inspiring, really. But let's be real, not everyone just has that aha moment where they know exactly what their passion is, right? Like, there's got to be a ton of people out there still searching for it.
You're totally right. And the article acknowledges that. They get that not everyone have that light bulb moment. Sometimes it's not even about choosing passion or practicality. It's about figuring out what you're even passionate about in the first place.
For sure. It's like when people say, you'll figure it out, or just follow your passion, it's way easier said than done, believe me. So, like, where do you even begin when you're at that point? Feeling lost.
The article makes a really good point about that, actually. They say that a lot of times this indecision is because we don't really know ourselves that well. Have you actually sat down and explored your interests? Have you actually gotten your hands dirty and experienced what different jobs or fields are really like day to day?
It's so true. Like, it's easy to romanticize a certain career path from the outside looking in. Like, you see the finished product, the highlight reel, but not all the hard work and the not so fun stuff that goes on behind the scenes. It really is. Like you see this amazing Instagram feed and think that's the life. But it's like you're only seeing the best 1% and not the other 99% of the work it took to get there.
Totally. And that's exactly why the article stresses how important it is to get some real-world experience.
Hmm.
And like, sooner rather than later, don't wait around hoping someone's going to hand you the perfect answer. Go out and find it yourself.
For sure. Like, you can read every book and every article, but nothing compares to just trying things out. Even if it's like taking on a side project or volunteering or shadowing someone who does something you're curious about.
Yeah, 100%. It's about collecting those real-world data points and then using them to figure out what you want to do.
Uh-huh.
And here's the thing, even if you try something and realize it's just not a good fit, that's still super valuable.
Yeah, because you learn something.
Exactly. You learn something about yourself, about what you don't want, which just gets you that much closer to knowing what you do want. And that kind of leads to another good point they make in the article, like, it's not just about the work itself, it's also about the people you'd be working with, too.
Oh, totally. I feel like that's something people don't think about that much when they're like thinking about their dream job.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so important, though. Like, if you zoom out a little, it's obvious that it's not just about the job title or the paycheck. It's about being part of something where you feel like you belong.
Hmm.
Do you want to work with people who are all about the money or with people who really care about the work?
Great. Like that thought experiment they do in the article. Would you still be passionate about this work even if you weren't getting paid a ton to do it?
Yes, exactly. That is such a good question to ask yourself because it really cuts to the core of how important this whole passion thing is to you.
It definitely makes you think twice about those like dream jobs that might not pay so well. And
Mhm.
speaking of like being strategic with your choices, there was another idea I really like the upwind strategy. It's like what you were saying earlier about thinking about your career over the long term.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. The upwind approach is so smart. It's about making choices that don't, like, close doors for you down the road. Like, if you're not sure which way to go, choose the path that still lets you change your mind later on.
It's like standing at a crossroads, but
Mm.
instead of picking a direction just based on what you see right in front of you, you're thinking about which path gives you the most options even after you start walking.
Exactly. It's about being smart, but also staying adaptable and open to new things as you go. They give that example about choosing between, like, a math degree versus economics.
Oh, yeah. The one where math gives you more options later on.
Right. If you have a solid math background, you can always decide to do economics later on, but it doesn't really work the other way around. It's not about making one decision and then being stuck with it forever. It's more like arming yourself with the skills that open more doors in the future.
So far we've got the instead of trap, the midwit peak, the ignorance factor, and now this upwind thing. That's a lot to keep track of.
Hmm.
But it does feel like the article's leading up to something with all of these ideas, right? Like they all connect back to one main question. It totally does. Like at the end of the day, it all comes back to that question of like, do you want to do really great work?
You nailed it. That's really what it boils down to.
Mm.
And the article makes a really good point about, like, selection bias with this whole
Mm.
follow your passion thing, because a lot of the advice we hear comes from crazy successful people, right?
Right.
And it's easy to just assume, oh, they're passionate, so that must be why they're successful. But we got to remember that not everyone is going to be super successful or even wants to be, and that's totally okay.
It's like they did what they loved and they made it big, so everyone just connects the two. But just because they go together doesn't mean one caused the other,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Correlation, not causation. It's like they always say. And the article makes it very clear. If you really want to do amazing work, to make a real impact, following your passion isn't just a good idea. It's like essential.
Because that real passion, that drive to just learn and create and dive in, you can't fake that. That's what keeps you going, especially when things get tough. And
It's inevitable, right? It's
ah,
going to happen no matter what you do.
for sure. And to bring it back around, it's that deep passion that gets you through the hard parts. Like when you're doubting yourself or the competition is fierce or when those inevitable challenges come up.
So if you're listening to this right now and you're kind of struggling with this whole thing, trying to balance the things you're passionate about with, actually making a living and all that, what would you say is the biggest takeaway? If you're feeling lost or just not sure what to do, here's what I want you to remember. Don't be afraid to go after the things you're interested in. Like, jump in, get some real experience, try a bunch of different things, and don't sweat the setbacks too much. All those experiences, even the ones that don't work out, those are super valuable.
It's like they're showing you the way, right?
Yeah.
They help you figure out what you like, what you don't like, and what really makes you tick.
Yep. Exactly. And remember, even if what you're passionate about doesn't make you a millionaire, finding your people, finding your tribe, that's worth more than money, you know?
So true. And remember, the people you surround yourself with, they can either make you want to quit or push you to keep going, so choose wisely. All right, I think that about wraps it up for us today. We covered a lot, from the instead of trap to that upwind strategy. So hopefully this deep dive gave you some new stuff to think about, a new perspective on how to find a career that really lights you up. And remember, it doesn't always have to be one or the other. With a little exploring and some strategic thinking, you can totally create a path that lets you do what you love. So until next time, keep those passions alive and keep diving deep.